Hello, you beautiful people out there, and welcome to the Banner Gaming's talk on Legion PvP changes. This is Kimo.
And this is Wisdom. Today, we are looking at how Legion is looking to drive an enormous wedge between how you play in PvP and how you play in PvE. This really is looking for a wholesale difference between the two, right? You're not going to be able to, in the same way, take your normal toolkit and your normal gear and jump into one, or feel like you can't get into PvE or PvE because you only have gear for the other. So, this is really something that the community's been looking for a long time, and Blizzard even went so far as to own up to the fact that they did not really get this right last time around. So they're looking to rectify it and just overhaul the system completely. Furthermore, this is something that will be available to players starting at level cap, which is going to make PvP at low levels quite a different story. They've mentioned already that for people who are looking to, twink a character at, like 49 or something like that, you won't be able to get access to the big differences that are coming into play.
It's really interesting because I think this is not only going to be beneficial for the player, but also beneficial for Blizzard as well. Because I'm sure, them having to balance talents in PvE while also making sure they're balanced in PvP and vice versa was probably a huge, huge headache. So I think this is going to help everybody out. Um, for those who don't know, there's going to be a PvP challenge, PvP talents and PvE talents. So now that we have two different trees, everything can be balanced, but I think it also caused a lot less anger in the community. Now, I know I've seen on the forums a lot of people, be angry about, hey, why do they nerf this ability? My spec isn't overpowered. This ability isn't overpowered. This is ridiculous. And they would be right from a PvE perspective, but they don't realize that Blizzard is nerfing it for a PvP reason and vice versa. So now Blizzard will be able to make their changes and there'll be less justified anger in the community because of misunderstanding.
And because this divide is going to be so profound, I think it really does make an optimistic environment for having PvP be more balanced, right? One of the big complaints as it stands right now is that when you go into PvP, especially at a high level, unless you're running particular comps or you have extremely talented players, you're really only going to be able to call a match when you see what the composition looks like, Um, in two equally skilled teams, depending on how you stack your composition, that's really going to be the deciding factor, more so than skill is. So, this is leading to this strange dynamic that we see now that's just not setting people up to be happy. And so, by differentiating this, for those of you who haven't heard, what we are going to be looking at is a carbon copy of the PvE talent tree, right? And it's going to look like it does now, where you've got a series of ranks, where you've got three across, and then it goes down in different brackets. However, rather than unlocking them on a level by level basis, you're going to unlock them with your PvP sort of honor ranking, for lack of a better term here. So there are going to be 50 different ranks, right? So you will start off at 1 and progress all the way up to 50. It's like an alternative experience system to some extent. And as you work through the system, you're going to, rather than earning whole tiers at a time, you're going to work down the tree so that initially you don't have any choices, but you get something out of every option. So you've got, your 7 different options or different skills to play with here. Some of these are active, others are passive. And as you continue to level up in the system, you have the opportunity to pick and choose between, well, do I want a passive or an active in this row, or do I want the mobility, or do I want the defensive? Do I want something that's more offensive? It lets you really build your playstyle. And I'm sure that at some point we will see what comes down to be like a beginner's build for pretty much everything, even when you're at rank 50. But this is going to be interesting because it's not letting people make a lot of the mistakes that you see in PvE and PvP right now, where people are picking the quote unquote PvP talent or using PvP glyphs or even using different trinkets and things like that when it's just not the right thing to be doing.
I just hope that the Legion weapon doesn't make you make choices between having good PvP play or having good PvE play. They did say that you will unlock everything, but there's still only room for so much runes, and there is still probably so much you can unlock at one time. So they plan on making the weapon be able to grow through the entire expansion, I just hope that as a player with a weapon, I don't have to choose between something that's really obvious for PvP and really obvious for PvE. Because if you're into both, that would be a little upsetting if you want to be competitive.
I think that that is a perfectly fair point. I'm actually going to be curious to see if they don't try and give the same spin on artifact talents that we see in individual specialization talents right now, where in an arena your previously 8% health regen on Hellstone use is now 8% DR on Hellstone use or something like that because you are in an arena. So they may very well give the same PvP PvE distinction to artifacts, but I'm not sure if that'll be the case. One of the things that I do like that they're doing so far is looking to add some degree of consistency across specializations in PvP. They are really looking to make tanks viable and to keep healers competitive. And some of the ways that they're doing that are adding some degree of consistency across these roles. So some tanks all have the option to take talents that do the same thing. Doesn't matter if they're a DK or a druid. Similarly, healers have the same kind of consistency where some things, particularly passives in a lot of these cases, allow them to be consistent. So you have some idea of what you're getting into, so you don't have to memorize 36 different kinds of talent trees. So you will know to some extent what you're going up against, which I think is a smart thing to do. It leads to easier balance changes because that way you can, in big passes, say, okay, tanks are not durable enough, so we're going to buff this particular passive so that in PvP they're just a little bit beefier and we're gonna like that better or something along those lines.
And as you know, coming from somebody who definitely loves PvP and I will be into it in Legion, but I'm not engrossed in it like I am with PvE, I feel like it puts us more in a level playing field. Say if all healers pick the talent that makes you spend 50% less mana healing on yourself, then I know to factor that in when I'm planning my attack. If I know that all tanks are generally picking anything that does less than 10% of your maximum health,
Just gets
do
ignored.
no damage, yeah, then I know not to waste like an ice lance or something small. Whatever, I don't know the exact move from Ages. That was a bad example, probably, but I know I need to hit them hard. You know, but that being said, with the Legion weapons that you can, talents you can pick from, if I'm a tank and I'm banking on that 10%, anything that does 10% or less than my maximum health be ignored, then I really want to jack stamina. And if there's a way to do that on my weapon, I want to do that, which I guess would work out for tanking, but maybe there'll be better viable options and you might have to give them up. I just hope they make it so you can pick differently on weapons.
One of the things that I'm actually not too big of a fan of because of the way that this rebalancing is being done is they are taking some of the buttons that everybody's got access to now, right? Regardless of class or spec you play, there's some consistent buttons that are generally seen as PvP only, right? You only ever hit these kinds of buttons when you need an awkward player offensive ability, something to that effect. And they are removing them from these specs altogether and they are making them PvP talents. And to some extent, they're actually going so far as to clip really kind of cornerstone abilities from some specs that they are getting rid of in their class, or excuse me, in their fantasy revamps and putting them into the talent tree, right? One really great example of this is Guard. It's a Brewmaster spell that is, the way things are set up right now, really the cornerstone of tanking for them. And they are removing that entirely, so that's not going to be available in PvP, or excuse me, in PvE anymore, because it doesn't really fit the fantasy that they see for the spec. But they are putting it back in the PvP tree, and on top of that, they're even going so far as to bake in the Warlords of Draenor. I think it's the 4-piece bonus where it applies to other people when you use it. So I think that that is an interesting shift, but I'm actually not a big fan because whether you're doing challenge modes or some particularly awkward or niche content, or there's some particular fight that calls for it, being able to use your PvP talents, or excuse me, abilities, and be able to play with the entire range of buttons that your specialization has access to really can separate the good from the great players. And whether it's in a
And for those of you who don't know what guard is a move that tanking monks use that absorbs a ton of damage. Now, I love guard, not as much as Wisdom loves guard because that's what he mains, but I do tank as a monk, during my fun time sometimes, and I love it because I click it, it blocks everything. But the fantasy of the class is based more around brews. So your stagger will now take magic damage will now be factored into your stagger. It looks like they want you to focus on getting your stagger up and dodging and purifying. So guard is no longer part of that, and I'm surprised they're keeping it in PvP. But there might be that kind of fantasy where all the other tanks have a way to protect their other teammates somehow. So maybe guard is just their avenue of doing it. Um, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah, if you look back at how they are incorporating some of the tier bonuses that we have in PvP right now, you can see that for tanks there is some consistency, where they have a particular active mitigation ability or something like that that is applied to their teammates, whether it's a damage reduction or healing effects, things like that. You can go through and look through the game right now and see what different specializations have access to, and then check the talent trees as they exist on certain up-to-date websites like Wowhead or MMOC, and see just how those look. So if you're interested in taking a look, the resources are out there. You can kind of play with the talent trees and see how the rankings work out and things like that. Though keep in mind, this is very, very early beta. Nothing is set in stone here. My last real big concern here with how far these two end games are being pushed apart is whether or not people will really be comfortable going back and forth. Because it seems like a lot of the dynamic we're seeing in Legion is making things that are currently inaccessible to people more accessible. We're seeing it in challenge modes. I think we're trying to see it in PvP, and to some extent, I think we're going to be seeing it in PvE as well. But I'm a little bit concerned. If my toolkit changes completely between being in an arena and being in a raid, I might not be comfortable going back and forth consistently, even if I have the gear and the talents to do it. I think that it actually may be preventative in some instances where people feel like, oh, I'm not good at or I don't understand how the talents for one of these two systems work. So I'm going to stay in the one that I do understand. So I think that that actually may be a point of concern that we see about accessibility, though, people manage to bridge the gap now, so they will probably be able to do so later. I just think it's something to keep an eye on here.
That's a good point. Blizzard's motto is easy to play, hard to master. And right now, as PvP stands before any of these changes, I'm a really good PvE player, but I don't feel comfortable in arenas at all. Do I play them? Yes, but I don't know what other specs generally combo or what they use. So if they can pull this off right, and I can understand generally the buffs and weaknesses and strengths of everything I'm going against, if it's more across the board, but still lets you have that hard to master. How do you combo that and what do you do? I think that will be beneficial. So Blizzard does have a chance to really play this right, and they also do have a chance to make this even worse. So we will have to hope for the best. Thank you for listening to the Banner Gaming's video on Legion PvP changes. If you like our video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. If you like our art, please check our artist link below. This is Kimo.
And this has been Wisdom. Please let us know down in the comments. Are you glad the PvE and PvP are being pushed so far apart? Do you think it'll be hard to switch between the two? Let us know your thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching and have a good night.
Bye bye.